the regular meeting of the South Lyon Board of Education meeting this 7 PM on November 18th. If you all please.
Nope.
Oh, excuse me, we have to do the attendance first.
Mr. Abate?
Here.
Mr. Dashner?
Here.
I'm here. Mr. Kennedy?
Here.
Mr. Clark?
We are all here.
No, Mr. Schwegler?
Mr. Schweiger here.
Ms. Ortell? Here.
Thank you. It's been a long day. Thank you. If you'll join me for the Pledge of Allegiance, I'd appreciate it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. This is our first opportunity for public comments. I don't have any cards at this point, but if somebody would like to step to the microphone, we'll get you to fill out a card afterwards. No takers? Okay. Move on to the next item, which is the agenda approval. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented, unless somebody would like to add something.
I'll move to approve the agenda for tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy.
Support.
Mrs. Jertel? Discussion? No changes? Okay. All those in favor of the agenda as presented, say aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed? 7-0. Okay, on to item number 5, the minutes. We have the November 4th and November 11th, one being the regular and our study session.
Motion to approve the November 4th regular meeting and the November 11th study session.
Thank you, Mrs. Henshaw.
Support.
Mrs. Jertel, thank you for the second. Questions, comments, changes? Okay. All those in favor of approving the minutes as presented, say aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. 7-0. And we have our bills. We have the October prepaids, November AP bill run, the November bond bills, the October wires and ACH transactions, and the October revenue report. With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the bills.
I'll move to approve the October 2019 prepaids, the November 2019 AP bill run, the November 2019 bond bills, the October 2019 wires and ACH transfers, and the October revenue report.
Thank you, Mr. Dashner. Do I have a second?
Support.
Thank you, Mrs. Henshaw. Discussion.
A comment I have on that, Stacy had caught me before the meeting. There was one error that was caught on the, it was the bond payments. They had a vendor that got incorrectly coded, so we wrote a check to somebody that shouldn't have gotten a check, so they reversed that and then wrote it to the right person. So I've got all the documents showing the original check, the reverse check, and then who it was supposed to go to here. So I'd like to, I guess, enter that as part of the approvals.
Okay, make sure that Judy gets that after the meeting then. We have the amendment. All those in favor of approving the bills as amended, say aye, please. Excuse me, that's a roll call vote. Thank you.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Schwegler?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Ms. Ortell?
Yes.
I vote yes. Mr. Abate?
Yes.
Mr. Dashner?
Yes.
Thank you, 7-0. And Mr. Kirby, we have a gift.
Yes, there are some gifts. South Lyon East High School continues to receive many gifts for their high school robotics team for materials, supplies, and travel. General Bearing Corporation gave $500. Both Super Abrasives Inc. and South Lyon Orthodontics gave $250, and Real Track Holdings gave $50 to South Lyon East High School Robotics. Kent Lake Elementary Robotics Team received $250 from the Oakland Oral Surgery Associates as well as the Bristol Trucking Company, and they received a cash donation of $100. I would recommend that we accept the gifts in accordance with Policy 9350.
Thank you, Mr. Kirby. I'll entertain a motion to accept the gifts as presented.
So moved.
Mr. Dashner.
Support.
Mrs. Hertel. And of course, with thanks, as always. Yep. Of course. Okay, all those in favor of accepting the gifts as presented, say aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed? 7-0. Okay, Mr. Kirby again.
All right, thank you. We had a resignation that required the hiring of a classroom teacher, and the classroom teacher is here this evening. His name is Adam Luck. Adam, go ahead and stand up. So he's a South Lyon High School science teacher. Adam comes with us with 9 years of teaching experience. He has a number of endorsements. He has social studies, history, biology, and educational technology endorsement. received his Master's of Arts in Ed Technology at Michigan State, received his undergrad at Albion, where he was a double major in biology and history, and a concentration in secondary education. He was a teacher at Bishop Foley High School, where he taught biology, AP biology, anatomy, honors anatomy, and environmental sciences. He also coached the Science Olympiad team. He taught also at Hazel Park, Advantage, and Crossroads, where he taught at the middle school and high school levels, both history and biology. And he assisted in the online distance learning classes at that school. He also taught at Claire B. Ford Academy, where he taught seven biology classes and 1 world history class. He has been a volunteer as well. He was a board member and past president of the Warrens Lion Club, and a volunteer in the Warrens Park and Recreation, as well as their Habitat for Humanity. So we're very happy, and the science department is happy to add Adam Luck to their team.
Thank
I
you.
would recommend that we approve the hiring of Adam Luck as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Kirby. With that, I'll entertain a motion to hire Mr. Luck.
So moved.
Support.
Thank you, Mrs. Hanshaw and Mr. Abate. Welcome. Okay.
Go green.
With that, all those in favor of the hire of Mr.
Roll-
Luck?
roll.
Excuse me, roll call vote for hires. Thank you.
Mr. Abate?
Yes.
Ms. Ortell?
Yes.
Mr. Swagler?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
I vote yes, and Mr. Dashner.
Yes.
Okay, 7-0. It's official. Thank you.
Welcome. Welcome aboard.
Okay, item number 9 is the superintendent selection service provider. This is a result of our study session on the 11th. And with that, I would like approval for the president and the secretary to execute the service agreement that you have in your packet from Michigan Leadership Institute.
So moved.
Okay.
Support.
Mrs. Hanshaw and Mr. Abate. Discussion, questions? You guys are easy here tonight. Okay. We'll need a roll call vote for that.
Okay. Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
I vote yes. Mr. Clark?
Yes,
Mr. Swagler?
Yes.
Ms. Ortell?
Yes.
Mr. Dashner?
Yes.
Mr. Abate?
Yes.
thank you. 7-0. I did notify Mr. Sylvia that as a result of the conversation, it appeared that he would be the service provider, so he's interested to get on the job, and I'll be starting to forward all the emails to him.
Let him do that.
Yeah, so. We're into section B, our information and inquiry. The first one is our bond planning presentation. You want to
Yes.
introduce our
I will do that.
esteemed consultants?
Team. This evening, we have Jeff Atkins with Barton Mallow. He is the senior project manager there. And we also have Chuck Lewis with IDS. We also have in the audience Stephanie Buhajar. Did I say it right? Thank you. Close enough? Say it.
Not even.
Buhajar. Bahajar. Oh, Stephanie, assistant project manager. And then we also have Charlie Haas, who is an architect with IDS as well. So we welcome them, and they have a presentation for us this evening.
Great.
Well, thank you, first of all, for letting us present here. We've spent the last 6-7 months here getting to know your buildings and spending a lot of time working on the project. So as a quick agenda, we want to kind of give you a handout, so you're not turning around the whole time trying to watch the screen. But so we'll do a quick introductions. You've got those already. Also, Chris and Chester are here. They're going to kind of be called on later in the presentation. We'll briefly talk about the facility audit process. I know the district's gone through that before in the past with other bond programs, so we won't dwell on that too much. We'll probably spend a lot of time talking about what your needs are and what opportunities the district has moving forward. And then we'll wrap up with some next steps, basically what the schedule would be, looking forward to a future bond program. So as far as the facility audit overview, what we've got here, we'll have some information to hand out at the end of the meeting. We just want to stay high level as we do through the presentation, but we'll hand you out the detail at the end of the presentation to go into it a little bit further. We did walk all the buildings over the summer. We met with all the principals and different staff members, athletic directors, to kind of hear what they wanted to. There was a Google document that was sent out for everybody to provide feedback to us and to have some interaction with that. We took that information, it was hundreds and hundreds of lines of data that we went through. We put cost estimates to it all. The numbers you're going to see here tonight are all-in numbers. These are numbers that include things like escalation, because we know that today's dollars won't buy tomorrow's construction. They include contingency for things that are unknown, and they include professional fees and other fees. So when you see numbers tonight, these are the all-in numbers for what the product will cost, the total cost to the project. And then also we know that we have to sort of prioritize things. We've never been at the district that can do everything that they want to do, all the needs and wants within the budget they have. So at somewhere along the line, you just have to start prioritizing things and realizing what has to go into this program and what may be part of a future program. So the areas we looked at, probably nothing up here will surprise you. It's the basic parts of the infrastructure. We looked at possible additions, other improvements to the buildings, and we're going to go into all these areas in detail here a little bit later in the presentation. One of the areas that we did look at that would have been probably a little bit different than last time around would be safety and security. Obviously, in the environment we're at, even as recent as what happened last week, this is a high priority for everybody. I do have to say that after looking through our report, there wasn't a whole lot of infrastructure facility improvements that we recommended for the district. The district's in great shape. For those that may know, my kids do go to the district, so it makes me very happy that to see that report come back, that there was very minor things that they recommended. A lot of the stuff relates to operational type things, because we're always reevaluating based on the latest situation, and then as people learn more about what to do and what to do inside the building and how to react to those different environments. But as far as on a facility thing, you'll not see a lot of things in here recommended for safety and security upgrades, because we feel the district's in great shape in that regard. So just kind of the timeline of this, again, we started back in May with a kickoff meeting. As soon as the kids left for the summer, we got in all the buildings, we met with all the principals before they left for the summer. We did a whole lot of walking around. I got a whole lot of steps on my Fitbit doing that. But we did get a good feel of the district. We're new to the district, so we had a chance to see everything that had been done. Obviously, Chuck was invaluable in that because he's got the history behind everything, so he knew the why. But I got to see all the whats that were out there. We had a lot of meetings. We've had a lot of subcommittee meetings. We've brought in different people. We brought the principals back in for some meetings. We brought the athletic directors back in for some meetings to kind of digest some ideas. And we're here today to present some of those findings to you. So the building work list, as I mentioned, we've got, I think you'll see the stack over here on the corner here. So we'll hand you out a copy of that afterwards. Again, there's lots of data we wanted to give to you, just to kind of understand all the little nitty-gritty detail that's in there for all the projects. But we're going to stay high level right now for this so that we can get you out of here before midnight. So the cost summary report, again, we kind of, with all that amount of data, how do you start to aggregate it? How do you start to prioritize it? So we put together different summary sheets, and those were our tools we used throughout the whole process to look at and try to evaluate where priorities were and where we needed to have more information to digest it or look at alternate options for different kind of opportunities that were out there. So getting into the upgrades. So building infrastructure, this we kind of consider a lot of the baseline items. These are things that, as anybody's house you may have to look at some point redoing your sidewalks, redoing your roof, redoing a boiler in your house. These are a lot of those kind of items. Just buildings do age out. Typical life cycle of a lot of items in construction is 20 to 25 years. So it's very predictable when these things are going to come due and when you might need to replace these. These are things you've done in previous bond issues, and these are things that just weren't done in those bond issues or things that are coming of age right now. I know you've got a lot of what you consider new facilities. People looking in the community may think that they're still new, but some of your buildings are starting to reach that 20-year life cycle. So we do know there are things that need to be done to maintain those buildings and start to replace some of those infrastructure items. One of the things on here that maybe falls a little out of the category, we did lighting upgrades. This was something that we did look at as we walked through it. With the advancements in lighting, the new LED fixtures, they last a whole lot longer, use a lot less energy, and provides an energy savings to the district. So we did kind of selectively choose about half the lights in the district we thought would be a great opportunity to start replacing. We looked at areas that were high use areas, such as cafeterias, gymnasiums, things that you would get a much quicker payback on those kind of things. What we didn't put in here were the classrooms. We felt that was something that could be looked at into a future program. But we do have a lot of lighting upgrades here that are going to help you operationally down the road. So building utilization study, kind of thinking outside this, most outsiders, most of my neighbors I talk to know this as a growing community. But when I started to look at the numbers, I realized that as many houses are being built, there's not as many kids as you would think coming into the community. I know you probably all know that, but for me, that was a little enlightening to understand that. So what we did do is we looked at what made the most sense for this to deal with that growth that we do have. There is a need for some additional classroom spaces at the elementary level, but how is the best to use that? We did do a study as far as looking at a new elementary school, and it just did not make sense. Operationally, it didn't make a lot of sense, but also you've got a couple of your elementary schools that are a little bit smaller than the other ones. So in trying to right size and balance the district out, we were looking at putting a 4-classroom addition at both Bartlett and Salem. And this will bring them in line with the other elementary schools in the district. They'll all be about 24 classrooms in size. It'll probably create some educational value as far as allowing you to implement programs that are very equal on the board. A little outside of my wheelhouse to understanding educationally what it does, but I can imagine that it's very efficient to have buildings that are very similar in size. Also, the Early Childhood Center, I'll let you speak.
Yeah, so this is a growth that we've all seen in the Early Childhood Center over the last decade. With the addition that we did at the last bond issue, there's still a need for more multi-purpose space outside of the classroom space. So this will add much-needed multi-purpose space and staff space to the building. It'll allow them to have various size groups using that space as opposed to a large multi-purpose room that only, and having to lock that up with 3 or 4 kids for a particular need. This will allow more flexibility overall. And it's a natural progression in the growth of the building.
The other additions we looked at were for the athletic spaces. One of them is at the high school, the pool. The pool is, I don't want to say it's end of life. It's got you could still still rebuild it, reconstruct things in it, but it definitely is tired. And also, as the swim program has grown in the district, you no longer can share that space over at East, so you really can't use the existing high school pool as a competition pool. And we also know that it's used heavily for both special needs programs and for community use. So we really spent a lot of time, we probably spent more time on this one item than anything else in the bond is what do we do with that pool? And we looked at several options of what made the most sense to reconstruct that, to renovate it. And we kind of came with a final, we got a sketch here, I'll show you in just a second. In addition to that, though, we also looked at the East High School. It was something that was master planned to always have an aux gym in that space. The building has grown up now. It's really is time because the enrollment has reached the point where it is causing some problems with practices and other things.
So I'll briefly walk you through the diagram here. The new 8-lane pool is located where the existing 6-lane pool is today. What this will provide is an 8-lane pool for competition. So you can have competition at both East and at Southland High and have the requirements of 8 lanes. We also added a therapy pool which adds benefits for a separate diving well, so you can have swim practice at the same time you have diving. And you also have a pool with a warmer temperature that allows the student population to use it. We all get a little antsy when we get in a pool that's 78, which is what the swimmers want it. But an average person that's just doing kind of swimming and playing around in the water or exercising, you like that water temp to be above 80 and 82. So this allows us to have 2 tanks of water. It'll meet the needs of the special ed students who use the pool quite a bit. And today, because it's not used as competition, it is that warmer water. So if we didn't have 2 tanks, we wouldn't have that opportunity. It also is an opportunity for the senior citizens who use the pool quite a bit, as well as the community at large. So it has a lot of flexibility in its design. It means taking out the old pool and tearing down the locker rooms and building new locker rooms. The Cabana locker rooms, for those that aren't aware of them, are kind of like family-style locker rooms if you've been to a YMCA, where you have a private changing area and an outdoor lockering space. So they're a little bit more open and meant to be more for the public and the community to use. And then the team locker rooms, we're adding the new corridor and entry back towards the gym so that we have access to those locker rooms. And a new entry, actually, if you think about it, there is an entry point there today. It helps with that flow as well. In doing that and maintaining some of the mechanical space, we've moved the training room over to which is now the dance room. It's not utilized as well as it should be. This will be a much better training location related to the fields that you'll see in a few minutes. The aux gym, I think we kind of joked that this might have been the original drawing that I did. But in all seriousness, this was the planning of the East High School, is that once it grew and got to capacity, we knew there'd be more need for gymnasium space, much like at South Lyon High School. This is that evolution of adding 2 more courts and much-needed storage along that gym as well. The space was planned, it was set aside, and it'll be an easy thing to add to the building overall. from a constructability standpoint. Go through that. Sure.
Some of the other highlights we wanted to give to you today, things that aren't just one-for-one replacements, but things that'll be enhancements to the building. Over at the high school, one of the things that we've heard was the science rooms just don't function properly. They're very, very traditional in the fact that they're more set up for lab requirements. But when we went over there, they were actually doing testing at the time or just had done testing. There's not enough floor space for those students to break up and do testing or do individual things. So we're looking at how we can economize the space. We know we're kind of stuck with 4 walls, but we can start to take out some of the office space that's in there and move things around, probably just because the enhancement with technology and how they're actually using the space now, it's going to let us enhance that space and let those students have a little better floor space. We've got enhancements to the performing arts and visual arts areas. Mostly that's in the theater at both of the high schools, the lighting upgrades and also pit cover. At both high schools, the media center, we're looking at enhancements there. Not nearly as much at East. East is a much newer media center, but there is still an opportunity for upgrading the furniture and the technology in those spaces because those have come quite a long way since that building was originally open. They're much more collaborative, much more interactive than what you would have considered a library in the past when that was originally built. But obviously the media center at the high school hasn't been renovated in quite a while. So we're definitely looking at that. We've got a clean slate. There's a lot we can do with that space. Also the CT and STEM programs, those are programs that are continuing to grow and evolve. We heard some things tonight about some donations that are being made to the robotics program. So we definitely want to give them the space and let that program continue to grow. Right now they're probably at capacity with floor space, so we want to give them some more space to work with.
And this is just an example of the types of spaces we're talking about. This happens to be a MAID studio out at Utica that we completed. But I think the transformation that we can talk about some of these spaces that are needed today and how the media center is underutilized and how it could be transformed is going to be quite exciting to work with the staff and develop in the future design phase.
So some of the site improvements we're looking at, again, things do age out, especially playground equipment. All the buildings do have some playground. The repairs or replacements sometimes get funded through some PTOs. But if you may know, the playground equipment is extremely expensive, and you have to fundraise for quite a long time before you can do some replacement. So one of the things we did identify is we did want to do some playground equipment replacement at all the elementary schools. This is one of the few things that actually Pearson does have. We're looking at some equipment very long in the future towards the end of the bond. We figure by then that building will have aged a little bit. They'll need a little bit too. So you will see a few dollars set aside for Pearson just for that piece of it. Also some parking lot improvements. I'll let you talk about that.
Yeah, again, this is a planning drawing from original design of the school. As the building expanded, you can see in white there actually the planned classroom expansion, but the parking lot was also designed to be expanded. So what we've looked at doing is with the growth and with the amount of events that happen at this building, there's a need for more parking. There's also a congestion issue with parent drop-off and student parking and student traffic. So you can kind of see on the bottom part of that, I'm pointing with my hand, sorry, but we want to create a separate drop-off for parent drop-off and separate that from the student traffic and then shift the student traffic to the north. We think that that'll accommodate the students and allow us enough flexibility in how where students park and growth in the future, as well as relieve some of the congestion. And actually help with some of the event parking that happen. We talk about maybe a football game or a baseball game, but if you think about the fact that there's practices every night, and then there might be something going on at the theater, and there might be something going on in the pool, there's more than one event happening at every school at night, and these parking lots get quite full depending on the event. So that'll help a lot with that as well. It's also just good to see that the proper planning happened in the past. I mean, and I mean that sincerely by the district because we thought about all these things, and this is really truly what happens when you plan ahead. I didn't mean that to be a plug for me. Sorry, I didn't mean that at all. Side athletics. Go ahead. You sure.
Okay, so a few of the things. One, the turf over at East is starting to get towards the end of its life. So that is one of the things we would include in here is replacement of that turf field. Also at both of the high schools, just their facilities are starting to age. Obviously there's a lot of wear and tear that goes on there, whether it be bleachers, whether it be just some sidewalks, roofs, the mechanical inside those little field house structures. So they all need a little bit of TLC to take care of those items. In addition to that, though, one of the things that we did, probably the second most time we spent on besides the pool, was talking about also what other synthetic turf fields might be appropriate for the school district to allow them to run as many activities as possible and not have to shut down games, relocate games just because of the weather.
And so what we ended up, and we did look at a lot of different options, we ended up with, at both schools, turfing the infield of the varsity baseball, turfing the entire varsity softball field, and adding a new practice field at each building. It's going to allow for a lot more opportunity for a lot more students, athletes, as well as band and others that are really competing for the use of these fields. The ball fields are a delay, or often cause delays in scheduling problems with the weather that happens and the fields being unplayable. This will eliminate that. The other added benefit is if maintaining these types of fields is a lot less work and a lot less cost than skinning an infield every other day or every day to make sure it's playable that night, or reworking a baseball field, restriping it, should reduce overall operating costs for the long term of the schools. So this is at East High School. It's a small section of it, but I think all are familiar with it. The new practice field would be just north of the tennis courts and west of the field house. And then a little switch here at Southline High School is the varsity baseball field actually faces in the wrong direction. So, and it needs a lot of TLC. The dugouts are in bad shape. The backstops need work. The batting cages need work. So by reorienting and relocating it to the west and rebuilding it in that location, we'll also be able to maintain one field for play and get the proper utilization. So when you're going to improve the field, why not do it to the right level and get the proper orientation? And the practice field here is located just north of the field house, and that's the #1 practice field, I think it was called at one time anyway. But its location is strategic in that it allows for to access the field house where equipment is stored, the storage buildings, instead of lugging them halfway across the site. The little inset there is the varsity softball field, which is obviously on the southwest part of the site. Trust you going to trust me with technology? No?
What we put up here is basically the highlights of the majority of what we're asking for funding is covered under these bullet points here. We know that in this district, we fund our technology hardware purchases through a bond initiative, because doing it through a general fund is just too expensive to do that. So what we're looking at here is replacement desktops. They're getting close to the end of their life cycle, so they will need to be replaced within this bond cycle. And mobile computing devices. As we look towards more curriculum being online in electronic format, and especially textbooks, they're going to all online, we need to put more devices in students' hands for longer periods of time, which means we're going to need to purchase more devices and replace some of the ones that we have. Again, that's through this whole bond cycle. Let's go down to our network infrastructure, kind of tied with our wireless network. I just mentioned we're going to be needing more wireless devices. We're going to need a stronger network and a stronger wireless network along with that. So if you have any more questions about any more of these little things here, this is not encompassing everything that we're asking for. This is just the major purchases that are included in the bond.
Is that the phone system for the whole district?
The whole district, yes. Yeah, I guess I should touch on that. We have a Cisco IP phone system. Cisco likes to force their users to upgrade their equipment, and they discontinue supporting older equipment. Well, we went through the first round of that, and that was kind of the core of the phone system. We didn't really touch a lot of the desktop phones because they told us they should, quote unquote, work with the new system. They do, for the most part. If you disconnect one of the old phones for any length of time and you plug it back in, it's not going to communicate. So we know that there's more upgrades coming from Cisco, and we need to address this in the next bond to replace those desktop phones so that we have operational phones in the district.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And this is one of the first times you'll see the introduction of a Series 2. We'll get into that a little bit more as we get into the financing of what that means, but we definitely wanted to make sure the technology program was sustainable, that we weren't just bonding for 5 years with the solutions, and then 5 years from now, we're looking to try to figure out what to do. So we do have 2 series of those device replacements in there. Furniture and equipment is, I think, one of the last things we're gonna cover. So we've kind of covered all the different user groups in this. We've got athletics, we've got the arts, we've got the CTE folks in there. A lot of the furniture is more what I'd consider the public areas, the things that are high use, the fabric-covered things that have worn out, just they don't age as well as the hard industrial type plastic things. So that's a replacement there. The other thing's kind of being introduced for the first time, I think, in your bond program is replacement of buses. That's something very unique, but it does save your general fund by not having to purchase those out of general fund. We're proposing 10 buses in this program to be purchased over that 5-year period, spaced between 2 different series of bond issues. So summarizing it all up, just kind of high level to see where all the totals are, if you haven't been adding it up in your head already. This kind of runs it down, so the bottom line is around $97 million. I know it's larger than what your last program was, that did include a new elementary, but if you kind of look at what you've got in there for new additions, you've basically got about an elementary school cost-wise in there. Plus, the cost of construction has gone up quite a bit since those last programs were done. It does increase quite a bit, so but this would be what you've seen here today would represent that $97 million program. So now, we kind of told you what, or how much. So we've worked with Stacy and with PFM to kind of come up with what your funding options are, what your availabilities are for a bond program. So in taking that $97 million number and how that could work, one of the things we looked at is doing this in 2 series. What that does, it allows you, instead of going out and selling all the bonds right up front for $97 million at once and having that large check put into your bank account and you're paying interest on that immediately, what this does is lets you just take out the first, in this case, $74 million, take out that much because that will cover your cost for the next 3 years to implement about $25 million worth of work for 3 years. And then down the road, you take out that second series of funding, and that second series will cover your buses down the road. It covers the second set of computers down the road. Some of the parking lots and roofs that we can push out towards that later end of it, that would be in that second series. The first series would include a lot of the improvements, the additions, the turf projects that we know the community would be expecting to see. Those are the enhancements that they'd want to see right away. So a lot of that's front-loaded into the project. In addition to that, there is issuance costs to go for a May election. There is some interest that you do pay on it, but you also do earn interest on that money. That money goes in the bank, and you do start earning interest on it right away. You will actually earn more interest because the economy is a little better than what it may have been in the past. You'll actually earn more interest than the issuance costs are. So that does create about a net $660,000 of additional cost or additional budget to put into the program, and that's what gets us to the $97.8 million number that you saw on the previous slide. Yeah, any? We got helper if we need a helper on that cost.
Just one more point is with doing it in 2 series also allows us not to increase mills on the community because you're not asking for the whole 97 million upfront. Allows a couple more years for some of that older debt to fall off. So when we do that second series, we will never be increasing the mills that we're asking for in this estimate and what we can project. We won't be increasing mills. Mills will continually being dropped off with this new bond program.
Probably the best point. So, thank you.
So with the athletic fields being redone, the outfields in the baseball field is the largest part of the playing area, and it's likely going to be unusable. While the infield is usable, the outfield isn't. Is it that much more of a cost to just do the whole thing?
A baseball outfield is almost $1 million more. When we originally were looking at this, we were going to do both the infield and outfield at the baseball field. After sitting down with the athletic directors, they felt to give them the most flexibility, the most options, they would love to have another practice field. So it is about $1 million to answer that question. With the high school field, by relocating it, we plan to completely rebuild that field with drainage-wise, so it will drain much better than it currently does. And also, in talking to them about what's the biggest issue as far as playability, they said the infield is by far the more problem than it is in the outfield. So it's a fair question, yeah, but to answer your question, it'd be about $1 million more per field to do the outfield in addition to it, but we feel this is a good compromise. So next steps, yes.
How about regarding the pool at Southline High, is that a total demolition of the existing structure?
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think the
because
bleachers would.
Because the way the pool was originally constructed, the locker rooms were not there. I was surprised by this too, Mr. Clark. The 6-lane pool was the original end of the building.
Right.
And then
Added to the
and
south.
it was a lower structure, so there was a series of columns there. By the time you look at, trying to resupport and redesign that structure, it just seems more economical to bring it down.
What's the timeline on that? Is that part of the next steps?
Yeah.
Okay, no, wait.
I got one more.
Yeah, sure.
With your lighting upgrades that you're doing, what kind of approximate annual savings in electricity is the district going to see?
You know, I don't have that number. We can get that number to you. I think what we're going to do is we're going to compare Pearson and Hardy, because I think Pearson's mostly all LEDs and Hardy's not. They're very comparable in size, so we'll have to get that number back to you. The payback's going to be less than 10 years on the operational. I mean, you're going to see immediate operational savings, but because it's bond dollars versus operational dollars, but I don't have the exact number for you.
10-year break even?
We did a square foot, watts per square foot kind of savings, and it's significant. It's in the north of $100,000. I think what we want to do is, once we design exactly what we're going to do, that's when we can give a really good answer, because it varies by what type of fixture, how long it's used, if we do gymnasium versus classrooms, those kinds of things. So we'll get a better handle as we design it and make sure we're using that money in the best way to reduce operating costs.
The other thing that plays into that, Dan, that we had discussions on is by switching LEDs, that'll lower the electric cost, which is operational dollars, which can go back in the
That's
classrooms.
exactly why I'm asking.
At the cost of bond dollars to
exactly
put
what
it
I'm asking.
in, so, I mean.
Yeah, the other benefit to that it's always hard to put a dollar value on, is it does save your crew. Your crew's not changing out bulbs nearly as often, so there is a workforce savings into that too. That would be more than double what the actual energy savings are. So there is a substantial savings to the district on that.
Chuck, does this totally complete the theater lighting at both schools that we were unable to
Yes,
complete with the
I
last
think
bond?
it will, yes.
Okay. I know that was a frustrating thing that we
It
dealt
was.
with.
Good point, Randy.
All right, so a little bit on the overall timeline of this. When we work with many districts, we talk about a year program, a process for the planning, from the initial kickoff meeting of walking a building towards when the voters are going into the voting booth. So right now, you're a little over halfway through that process of this program. You've done all the facility evaluations, you've done some prioritization, you've got the cost estimates put together. So what we see the next step in the timeline is to now reach out a little further to a more group to test this, to reinforce our thinking, to think of what we may have missed, to get their reaction on what we think is right, but make sure to vet it out with them before we do anything more. So that would be one of our next steps we do take, is to have some focus groups with that. Right now, we're planning on, it'll be 10 different focus groups. It'll be early next month, we'll be bringing them in there. It'll be a mixed bag of, there'll be some parents, some teachers, some community leaders, some long-term residents. We'll even have a group of students in there too, to hear what they have to say, kind of what's on the ground level of what their opinions are and things. So these focus groups usually do provide that, and we'll get that report back to you as soon as we can, hopefully before Christmas, but if not, it'll be right after Christmas. We'll get you that focus group report of what they have to say, so you can evaluate what their thoughts are. So a little more on the timeline. So as I mentioned, that we have December 11th as a tentative. We're going to actually send out invites after today's meeting. We'll probably go out first thing tomorrow morning. I think we've got a whole good roster of who we want to have. There'll be a representative from every single building. We'll have a group of secondary parents and a group of elementary parents, just so they can kind of, it's nice to have them sit together with each other so they can brainstorm together what's being done. So those invites will go out tomorrow to bring those groups together. So we plan, based on the feedback we get from that, we'll kind of tweak anything we do need to, or do any follow-up information on the bond program. We have a board meeting on January 21st next year that we plan to come back to you. We'll be at a question and answers session. If there's anything that you did see in the report that you want some answers on, other things you may have think about. We know we're putting a lot of information out there today, so we understand that we don't expect to have every question asked today, and we don't expect to have every answer today, but we want to give you some information, have some time to digest that, then come back on the 21st, have some more discussion on it, and then, assuming everything goes well, you still want to move forward with a May election. The February 3rd would be your board meeting to call for election. You're required to call for election 12 weeks prior to that point, so your February 3rd meeting lines up pretty perfectly for that. Hopefully there's not a snow day, hopefully there's nothing else going on, that you don't cancel a board meeting, but if there is, you can go all the way up to, I think, February 11th or 12th is the last date. So we did want to at least give us a little buffer, because we know we live in Michigan. So then, at that point, the informational campaign kind of kicks out. We'll get into a lot more of that information as we get along. I didn't want to go too much into the campaign side of that. I don't want to get the cart before the horse. I want to make sure to give you the information today, but we'll be happy to talk to you a little more about the campaign as that moves along. I think that's it. Hopefully I gave you some high-level information. We didn't get too far in the weeds for you, but we do have the copies of all the detailed information we'll leave with you behind it. Melissa, did I miss anything?
No, I just have a couple points to make. First of all, we have been known to have board meetings even on snow days. So don't be surprised if there would still be a board meeting that evening. Just in terms of the team, it's been a good group between our art committee as well as FPC, kind of working through all of these kind of big picture ideas, but there's a lot of little details that have gone into this. And again, some of the big highlights is that, we had some strong focus areas as we went through this process. First of all, we wanted to deal with the growth that we do have responsibly. And so that's why we're not putting out to the public at this time building a new elementary school. That's about $700,000 annually out of the general fund to open another brand-new school, when at this point with 1.5% growth, it's just not necessary at this time. So really thinking about that responsibly too. That kind of ties into the other idea of the fact that we're trying to save general fund dollars for the classroom. And so how do you do that? You look at some things differently. You look at buses maybe for the first time in terms of going for a bond issue and things like that. So that's another big component that we talked a lot about. So it might be a little bit different for our community, but it makes a lot of sense to have $1 million worth of bus purchases come from there versus out of the general fund. We were thinking about big picture needs of the district, so you think about the pool and the theater and those pieces, the fields that we know need replaced. And then you think about for our taxpayers too, if we can do this without an increase, potentially with what we're predicting, it's the right time to move. And we've seen surrounding districts make the same decision for their communities as well. So those are just some of the things I wanted to highlight as well as thank you all for your work too.
Any questions?
One comment I'll make is sitting on the FPC is, turf replacement. If you look at South Lyon East, you look at the field and it looks like it's in great shape, but the sports program has to do concussion testing in there. And what's happening is over the years, it becomes a harder hit as the field starts to wear. So it's based on actual data as opposed to just looks. And that was one of the questions I had when we first started talking about it, just so people understand that. And another thing that I think is really important is probably about 40% of this bond total is the boring stuff. It's fixing roofs, it's replacing flooring, it's boring, but it's stuff that needs to be done. I mean, we've got a great set of buildings here, and if we don't invest to keep them up to snuff, they're gonna fall off quickly. And, we think it's very important to try to keep on top of that stuff and keep the buildings looking new.
Thank you. Any questions?
I concur. Everything I would comment on, you guys already mentioned. One of the things I can mention, we think of East as this brand new high school. It's relatively new, but it's over 10 years old. And in that 10, 11 years, there's things on the list that we need to address. So I think a lot of the community thinks that it's new. It is, but it's not that new. So it needs some help.
No, and I thank you for bringing up the field, because I think the public perception sometimes is those turf fields last forever. And I discovered when we did the South Lyon High field, has it been 3 years already now? That they do wear, and it has to do with the safety. So we do want the public to make sure that they understand it's about the safety. It's not just about how it looks, really. I do want to thank the members of the facility committee. You guys have put a lot of time and effort into bringing it to this point. I know how, been there, done it, so I know what it's like, and it's, you wrestle with a lot of tough decisions. So thank you for what you've done.
And one more thing real quick. Mr. Cox and Mr. Bellinger were also instrumental. They didn't say a whole lot tonight, but without them keeping our technology where it's at and everything else in our buildings looking as good and functioning as well as they do, this picture would probably look much, much different without those guys doing what they do. So thank you guys for being on the committee and doing what you do, as well as IDS and Barton Mallow folks to help us through this.
And the more facilities that we upgrade, the better that Chris sleeps at night. We know that, so. Thank you, gentlemen. Anything else? Okay, and thank you very much.
Yeah. Have a
And
great
to your
hop-
team, thank you for
Thanksgiving,
coming.
and
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the legislation. Do you have anything exciting to?
Well, they're on break right now, enjoying the hunting and the holiday for Thanksgiving. We're just gonna continue to watch the Michigan Merit Curriculum piece.
Yeah, that was interesting. I did read some of the stuff that they talked about taking out, and I thought, that's interesting.
Right, we're going to be working through that as the Oakland County Superintendent's Group too, to try to come to some common pieces with regard to that too, as well as the Teaching and Learning Committee. So stay tuned for that piece and those bills. So nothing more than that.
Okay, thank you. Committee reports, legislative, not really much new other than what Mrs. Baker just said. You did see the minutes from the OCSBA last meeting in front of you, which thank you, Judy, for including that. Policy, we just met this evening to continue to work on.
Yeah, we just kind of tweaked some policies. We discussed a bunch of little policy tweaks, made a couple of little changes. Some we just needed to kind of have a discussion.
And we haven't even gotten into the administrative regulations yet,
Right,
so
yeah.
it's a ways to go. And finance,
We have not had a meeting since we had the audit presentation.
okay, which went well, that's good. Facilities and grounds, we see the fruits of you guys'
Yes, and we actually had a quick meeting just before our 7 o'clock to review the emergency management plan, which has gone through the SIP committees at each school, except for one, which I think is happening this Friday, and I apologize, I forget which one.
Cheers.
This is something that is needed to be voted on by law by the board by the end of this year, and it will be coming to our meeting in December.
Okay, great, thank you, Mrs.
Did I
Rattell.
catch
And
everything?
if anyone wants to come see one of the plans, you can stop by the board office and either Mr. Kirby or myself will set you up to review a plan.
Okay, great. Curriculum and communications,
We did finally meet
okay,
last week. We talked about, learned about 2 new courses at the high school level, a marketing course, and we're calling it a total fitness phys ed course. To be, which one was piloted? The marketing course as a pilot?
The PE course.
PE course as a pilot.
Yep.
And we talked about the next step in our district logo and slogan update. We are moving with that.
okay, great. Okay, anything under other?
I have just 2 others. One is just, we received a really nice thank you and congratulations about the Washington DC trip from a parent who was also a chaperone, just how wonderful it is for our students. And we receive very similar, this was from a Centennial parent, but we also receive amazing ones from Millennium parents as well. Just, that's a great, great program, and we appreciate the work that goes into it from our teachers and administrators as well, and the parent chaperones, who are you all awake yet? And then I also did want to share about Jim Subley's passing, our Dolson former principal, who, if anyone would see Jim walk into the room right now, you'd have smiles, because he was all about laughter and kindness and relationships, and we missed him when he was still here with us, and we continue to miss him, but he brought great joy to parents and students and staff, so just wanted to share about his passing this evening.
Real quick, I just wanted to mention that I had some quick conversations with Paul Silveri from Michigan Leadership Institute. Once I get this agreement back to him, we agreed to talk further. He had some recommendations about how we proceed, and I'll be sharing some of that information with emails, because we don't have a meeting again until the 2nd, I think it is, right? And we'll try to have a little bit of more information by that date, so I'll get you all some emails and see where we're at. Educational report.
Just the fashion show that's coming up in March.
And you've been busy anyway. Thank you for the stories about your Washington trip. They
Yes,
were,
yeah.
Good. Our monthly financial report is available on the website. I encourage everyone who's interested to check that out. And this is now our second opportunity for public comments. If anybody chooses to step to the microphone, please do so. Okay. Next is our retirements. So with a sad comment here, we are sorry to see you go, Mrs. Baker, but we do have your resignation letter in the packet. We already knew about it, but, and also Mr. Rosecrans from South Lyon High, who I did not realize had been here that long. Time flies. And our meeting dates are outlined for the remainder of the year, and we'll start off with board comments. How about Mr. Kennedy? Would you like to go first this evening?
Sure. I have some praises and some thanks for everybody. Mr. Hatakanavala was invited, was invited, let me start again. I had the opportunity to see the U of M's Glee Club with him, his wife, and some of our high school choir kids. I should put that in the correct order. Our kids were fantastic, and the U of M Men's Glee Club has two of our former students on stage, Jack Barshaw and Doug McClure, who are fantastic to begin with. To see them on stage with the Glee Club, even more fantastic, so kudos to them. Moon Over Buffalo, Britt Connors, director at the high school for their play this year, was fantastic. I stole your thunder, Jenny, I'm sorry. Fantastic performance. Welcome to Adam Luck, he's already left, but welcome to the team. Thanks again to the IDS gang and all of us who are on the committee, making some tough decisions, but I'm thinking very positive about that. And your retirement, obviously, and Mitch's retirement. Many years, always saw him as a mentor, always positive, supportive for our students and teachers, helping us to all make good decisions and do the right thing. Sad to see him go, but I'm happy. Wish him well.
Thank you. Mr. Swayler.
Best of luck in your new venture.
Thank you.
I do wish you well. Very good presentation. It was very informative. I'm glad to finally get to see a lot of the details that are in there. And although I'm sure it's not easy to make the hire you did in the middle of the year, he looks like on paper to be a real good candidate. So good job in that.
Mr. Bate.
Thank you to everybody involved in getting us halfway through the process on this. Is an unbelievable amount of work. I don't even know where you, well, you know where you began, and you just showed us, but I mean, that's amazing, and it's all very much needed. Sorry to hear about Mr. Subli, and our condolences, of course, to his family. Welcome to our brand new science teacher. That's always a good thing. I've told you this like 7 different times, but I love that you do that you make sure you bring people in, highlight our new people, and get us a chance to meet. That's a really good thing. That's all I got. Have a good night, everybody.
Mrs. Reptel.
So I will take a little thunder back and say Moon Over Buffalo was fantastic. I did see it yesterday. Yes, I was awake for it. I was one of the parent chaperones for the DC trip, and it was phenomenal. This is my second time going, and it was just as phenomenal as the first time. And I want to give kudos, as many kudos and praise and hurrahs and yahoos to Ms. Barshaw and Ms. Calbo-Flesh. Apologize if I made it. I've had her twice now with my kids, and I'm still not sure I'm saying it right. They do a great job with organizing. I know it's a lot of work. The first time I went, I was on the bus with both of them. Second time, I was on the bus with Ms. Calbo-Flesh, so just to hear the fun stories. But I think the weather was great. The kids had a great time, and I think the parent chaperones had a great time. The barn was very fun. I actually sat at the table with Ms. Lowry, and that was very fun. So I just want to say thank you. It's a great program. We do come back cramped and exhausted. But my bus actually slept both nights, going and coming. And I just can't say enough about the program. I think it's fantastic. And I think this year doing Gettysburg, I didn't have a chance with my daughter this year. That was phenomenal. I think that was probably one of my favorite things to do. So, and welcome to the new teacher. And I think that's all I have.
Mrs. Sanchez?
I was also on the DC trip, and it was fabulous, so thank you to all of them. I'm not going to repeat everything everyone else said. I'm going to just end with best of luck to our 9 swimmers and 1 diver that are going to the state championships this weekend.
Mr. Dashner?
Ditto what everyone else said, but I just have one question for Melissa. Is this the world record for the district for the earliest snow day?
I think so. And it was a no-brainer, so I can't even really get credit for it, so.
That's it.
Thank you. I'll tell you, I am so glad that we do those middle school trips. I think if you think back individually as we all reflect on our school days, when I was in, I think it was 11th grade, we did our Gettysburg trip. That's something that you remember the rest of your life, and what you learn and experience, and I'm so glad we do those, because obviously they are fun. I do want to tell the community and the board that we are about to undertake probably the most amount of work that we will deal with in a long time. This bond, this is just the beginning. I mean, thank you for saying we've done half the work, but I'll say we have not done half the work yet. So we have a long way to go, and it's going to take a lot of work from all of us involved. And hopefully the community support will be there, but it's going to take a lot of work. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. And thank you, Mrs. Baker. I didn't want to select you there. Thank you for everything you've done so far.
So moved.
Support. Mr. Dashner and Mrs. Urtel, how's that? All those in favor say aye, please.
Aye.
We are adjourned.